Get back into books with Richard and Judy.
And that's another list completed.
Oh, you and your lists, Judy.
You'd be lost without my list. It's all about the details, as you know.
You are right, of course, my fabulous listmeister. Actually, I'll go and get that shopping if you want. Where is that list?
Oh, is it on the list pile? On top of the list of books we've read recently and the list of books we've been sent, but beside the list of books we've yet to start.
No, can't see it.
Is it by the to-do list?
Hang on. Nope.
I know where it is. It's under that tiny little seat with my notes for the next book in our book club exclusive to WHSmith.
Ah, yeah, got it. Oh, and I see what you've done there. Is that a mini chair?
It is! I knew you'd like that.
Which must mean that Jessie Burton is coming in and bringing her novel, The Miniaturist. All right, The Miniaturist.
Nella turns back to the door, now slightly ajar. Was it like this before? She cannot be sure. She pushes on it, peering into the void as cool air rises from the marble. Johannes Brandt, she calls, loud, a little panicked. Is this a game? She thinks.
Well, hello again, and welcome for the first time to the Richard and Judy Spring Selection, because this is our launch title. It's The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. And what a starter, what a haunting, atmospheric and richly layered story Jessie has woven in this absolutely wonderful novel. An extraordinary wedding gift sits at the story's heart. It's a cabinet-sized replica of a young bride's Amsterdam home in 1686. It's going to be furnished by a craftsman, the mysterious miniaturist, but his delicate models begin to reflect their real-life versions in increasingly peculiar ways. It's gripping and it's creepy, and I have to say, and Jess is here, I kind of felt that we'd sort of, in a sense, walked into a Dutch old curiosity shop and found Jane Eyre in there. It has a wonderfully classic feel, and it's your first novel.
Yes.
It's extraordinary achievement.
Thank you.
Beautifully written. Tell us about the inspiration for it. What gave you this fundamental idea to have a woman in Amsterdam in the 17th century and, in effect, a magical doll's house?
Well, the fundamental inspiration was a doll's house that I did see in Amsterdam when I was there in 2009. It's known as Petronella Ortmann's Cabinet House, and it's an enormous structure in the Rijksmuseum.
Oh.
And it's
I've
about,
seen it actually.
Yeah, right.
It's
And
beautiful.
it is permanently on exhibit there because it is so stunning, and you sort of see it and your breath is taken away because it's so beautiful, it's so intimate and intricate, and yet at the same time it's very imposing.
And was it made originally for a little girl or was it made for a grown-up?
It was made for a grown woman. She
Yeah.
had it commissioned in
Yeah.
1686, and she had it made as an exact replica of her real home. So she picked her 9 best rooms, and she put her 9 best rooms on show.
Yeah.
And anything that she had in full size, so silk screens or Venetian glass, marble, oil paintings, the works, she had miniaturized to the point she would have things shipped in from Japan and the Indies and commissioned also in Amsterdam by craftsmen. And she spent as much money on it as a real house.
They're so,
And this gripped you.
Yeah.
Concept gripped
it
you.
would, wouldn't it? Because dolls' houses are fascinating, aren't they?
They're
the whole
very,
concept.
yeah, they're very weird things as much as they are.
Before we get into the book, and I'm sorry to divert a bit, what happened to her in the end, to Petronella?
The real woman?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, I have a Dutch editor, and she went to the archives and she could understand them all. And she said that Nella, the real Nella, was actually married twice, and she buried some children as well, and actually predeceased her husband, who then went on to exhibit the doll's house in the hallway. And it was known as one of the wonders of the world. So I don't know quite how long she lasted. Mortality rates were not great in those days.
Yeah, it all sounds, there's something a bit sad and mysterious about that. And I
but
can
that's
quite understand why it inspired you.
That's Amsterdam,
to
isn't
write
it?
the book.
Amsterdam is quite. It's a lovely place, but it's quite creepy, isn't it?
It is
Particularly when you
creepy.
delve into its past.
Well, it's a place of contradiction because well, certainly at the time, the Dutch Empire was incredibly powerful, and they were very wealthy, and they were spending lots of money on dolls' houses that they couldn't, live in, and they were painting themselves and their families in their houses and what they were eating. They were documenting themselves, and yet at the same time there was still a kind of hangover from Calvinism, the first half of the 17th century, a fear of this excess, of this ostentatious behaviour, because Holland was essentially shored up from the sea, and all the iconography I discovered, all the sort of fear of the future was tied in with the water. We will drown.
Fascinating.
You know, the
If
water
we sin, God will punish us,
exactly.
yes.
So it was the sea had given them their bounty. They had harnessed the waves, and yet at the same time, if they carried on with this kind of excess, maybe something bad would happen.
Well, that's the real Petronella. Let's talk about the story now. Tell us in parenthesis what you've done with it.
So I've taken this doll's house, the cabinet house, and I've used it as a central symbol, I suppose, for things that interest me, which is the kind of conflict between the domestic private life and what you have to do on your public surface, how you have to behave in society. The idea of imagination and art as a means to set yourself free, as a means to understand who you are and who you may want to be. And the story, the Nella in my book, I call her Nella. She is much younger than the real Nella. She's 18 years old and she comes from the countryside. She's full of ideas and hope. She's marrying this very wealthy merchant, kind of an arranged marriage, but she doesn't quite realise that.
He's older than she is.
He's 39,
Yeah.
never been married, and it's all been arranged by this very crucial character for me, who is Marin, his sister. Yeah, and she has kind of sorted this marriage out. Nella doesn't really realise this. And the whole book, I suppose, in one way you could look at it, it's a power play between these people. At first, certainly, until they all learn about each other and their secrets, and that actually it would be better to stick together, because the secrets that are in this house are so dangerous that lives would be lost if they came out.
And there's all sorts of personal detail in the sense, for example, that the new husband won't consummate the marriage. He avoids the bedroom.
Yes,
he
will not go there. And I quite like that what I've done, rather than this sort of demure virgin maiden, I've got this girl who's quite desperate to lose her virginity. She wants to live. And her husband is being incredibly demure and avoiding her.
And he's the one who gives her the doll's house.
Yes, and she views that as a bit of an insult, because she's like, I'm 18 now, I'm a woman, I'm your wife, I don't need this sort of childish toy. But ironically, it becomes a means that unlocks her life and her understanding of her new situation.
Because these parcels arrive that the miniaturist has sent with the stock, as it were, the for that, and they take on supernatural qualities, really.
Well, they do. I think the miniaturist, Nella hires the services of this miniaturist as an act of rebellion. So rather than, just for example, Marin doesn't let her play the lutes that are on the wall. She says they're just for show. Nella really wants to play a lute. She can't play a lute, so she miniaturises the lute and plucks it in her bedroom, tragically. But all of these things that she orders are acts of rebellion and also bids for freedom. She lives her life through this miniature prism. But what starts happening is that the miniaturist seems to predict disasters events that then subsequently Nella believes happen in their real life. So she looks to the miniaturist as a prophet. And she also discovers that the miniaturist is a woman, and that's not giving too much away. She picked the penny drops on that quite early on. And she believes that the miniaturist holds the key to their fates, whereas what I'm trying to say in the book is, although it feels supernatural, actually it's a question of perception, and Nella becomes the miniaturist of her own life, the architect of her own fortune. Good, yes. And actually everything that she has felt to be ghostly or imbued with a power beyond her is not. The power is within her.
And you lace your story with horrible hypocrisy. I mean, Marin, for example, the sister, is Calvinistic, really, and basically insists that sweet things should not be enjoyed. But she has an addiction, hasn't she? What's it to? Not marzipan.
It was candied walnuts.
That's candied walnut. That's right. A secret addiction. Total hypocrite.
Wasn't there a real event where Calvinists said that gingerbread men should not be baked or eaten because it was idolatry?
Yeah, absolutely. Twice in the 17th century, dolls were banned and gingerbread cut in the shape of people.
Didn't last long though, did it?
It didn't. Because I think essentially they're quite festive, feasting, party kind of people. Like from my research, there was a feast day practically every day of the year.
Yeah. I sort of think of the Dutch as having a good time. I don't think of them as having such a kind of dark Calvinistic background. It's interesting.
They do. I mean, you go into the churches and say the old church in Amsterdam, where there are several scenes set in the book. The only thing that survives of the Catholic faith is the ceiling, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's still painted with both patron saints of Amsterdam, but other saints and beautiful images. But the rest of the church is just pale white. There's nothing there. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor, I suppose, for the Dutch psyche.
I must go back. I haven't been back to Amsterdam for years and years and
not
years.
since the early 80s.
You've really inspired me to go
back. Oh, good. I should get a commission from the Amsterdam
you should.
tourist agency.
Well, it's as you say, all inspired by a visit to the Rijksmuseum in
that's
Amsterdam, and all these tiny little seeds from which these extraordinary stories grow in all novelists' minds. And it's as we said, it's your first one.
Yeah.
Were you conscious when you were writing it of becoming a novelist, and having to think like a novelist, or did you just follow your instincts and your?
I followed my instincts.
Yeah.
I think it's quite dangerous to sort of think I'm a novelist. I am going to be a novelist or a writer. I'd experienced my previous career as an actress, and I was very well trained by then in managing expectation and taking each day as it came. And so with the Miniaturist, it was a slightly torturous journey at times, and it could have, I wrote 17 drafts of it, so it went in several.
17?
Yeah, in total. I'm a sadomasochist. What can I say?
Only who two?
Yeah, I do. Well, I think it was partly as well because I had never written a book, and I didn't realise quite how much I wanted to say and how many characters. And I think it's being an actress, you want to give every character meaning, and you can have a line too, and you can have. So I had to learn how to sort of pare it back. And
but I gather that your second book is going to be also historical. It's
yes.
So you're very much drawn to writing in history.
I think so. I don't know. I've not really examined it, but I'm not particularly attracted to writing a book set in the contemporary age. I don't know why, but I've always loved the kind of idea of how we used to live, both being completely different and strange, and that we could immerse ourselves in that, but also that there are universal truths about love and loss and betrayal and grief that sail through the centuries. So it gives me a nice excuse to research and learn myself as much as sort of take other people on the journey too.
Well, you're a very, very good writer in many ways, but particularly you take the reader by the hand and you draw them through. It felt to me as I was reading it a little bit as if I was being taken on a guided tour of a very complicated and sometimes rather dark garden.
Yeah.
And everything's slowly revealed and explained, and you come out the other end in one piece. But it's a terrific read, it really is. And for a first novel, it's sensational.
That's
We've
very
just bought
kind.
our granddaughter a doll's house.
Yes.
We'll have to watch this.
Yes, don't leave her alone with it.
No.
Okay, so there we are. That's the Richard and Judy Spring List opener, The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. Obviously, you can pick it up in any bookshop or online, but if you do get it from WHSmith in paperback, you will find at the back of the book, as with all of our book club books, there is lots and lots of extra content exclusive to the books from WHSmith, our partner in this, including an extended question and answer session with the author, where we cover areas that we haven't discussed here. And that can be quite revealing, and I would recommend that you don't turn to those pages until you've actually read the novel, because it might give a couple of things away. But there we are, The Miniaturist, Jessie Burton. It's a great start for spring.
I do not have a formula for my writing. I wish I did, because it would make it a lot easier. I think sometimes I just have an idea, a sort of inspiration, a trigger, and I start thinking all the possible stories that could spiral out from it. And I do my best to keep a structure in place, and I have a notepad next to me to say, this is what has to happen. I don't know when it has to happen, but it has to happen at some point. So I don't really have a magic formula as such. The most essential thing for me is to get some words on the page so I can then understand, perhaps get closer to what I was trying to say in the first place. I think once I've sort of got the idea in my head, it does come down to word count, and certainly for the first draft, it's about getting 1,000 or 2,000 words out a day if you can. It sounds fairly robotic, but you can only start to, I think, feel free once you've actually got some material to actually play with. Has writing changed me as a person? I think, obviously, I've experienced exciting new things, like the Richard and Judy book club is one, that I would never have dreamed of a year ago. But I think essentially this has happened to me at 31, not 21, or the age of 11, and I'm fairly sure of, what matters to me and what I value in my life, and for me the work is more important. So yes, elements of my life have changed, but I think essentially as an individual I haven't. And it's perverse really, but I've had lots of success, but it doesn't make me any more sure of my actual ability, which I think in some ways is a good thing. It's good to have doubt and self-awareness, but when I first picked up a copy of my book, it felt very, very good, a little surreal, a little emotional. Yeah, it was very exciting. And I couldn't believe it really. It had become an object from a manuscript and just a sprawling idea in my mind into this beautiful book. It was a good day. And when you see someone on the tube reading it, that's exciting. I haven't seen that. My boyfriend has, and a couple of friends, and they sort of send me photos of, which is probably illegal, just sending me photos of other people on the train. And they're reading my book, and I'm like, do they look like they're enjoying it?
I found this a slightly spooky story. Maybe that's because old Amsterdam isn't quite the sort of romantic place that we have in our mind. It is quite haunted, and it's a haunting book. And it's dark, and it's in the era of candlelight and lamplight and, you know, pre-electricity and stuff. And I just thought some of the scenes in the house made me shiver slightly.
You mean the real house or the doll's house?
No, the real house.
The real
it's
house.
A cold and dark place.
But that's the thing. I mean, that's her genius to actually have this house, this doll's house, which completely represents every single thing about the real house that Nella, the young heroine, is living in. Down to the furniture, the silk screens, the curtains, the little figures and everything. There's something very spooky about dolls' houses anyway.
Yes, there is. You're right, like a clown's mask.
Yeah.
What is it? But there is something there that's unsettling. However, I must say I thought that as the parcels began to arrive from the miniaturist, who turns out to be a woman, and we begin to see that they are in some way predicting the immediate future, I got very drawn into the story at that point. I just wanted the next parcel to arrive. I wanted to see what the next prediction was going to be. And then, of course, crucially, if it came true, and if not, if it came kind of quasi-true. I thought all that was really sort of absorbing and drew me forward into the story.
Yeah, and beautifully written. I mean, in terms of her, you know, her depictions of Amsterdam in those days, completely different from any way I'd sort of imagined it. The way she talks about, for example, you know, the old Catholicism before there was the new Protestantism and the old Catholicism, the old churches. You go in and you see that the ceilings are still painted with these beautiful frescoes of angels and archangels and prophets and everything, and then the rest of the church has just been completely left. No, white, she said, completely white walls, which you regard as being very Scandinavian, very plain. And there is obviously that huge dichotomy in the Dutch personality, which I wasn't aware of actually until I read this book. So it's a fantastic piece of work.
And as you say, beautifully written.
I would advise somebody keep your career and write in your spare time, at least to start with, because it's extremely difficult to make a living as a writer. I'm told 50 writers of fiction and non-fiction in the UK who make a living purely from writing. Most other people have jobs as journalists or teachers or psychotherapists or any number of different trades. So don't give up your day job would be my advice.
I'm an award-winning journalist and a best-selling novelist, and I left school at the age of 16 with one plan: to write, to tell stories. And that's what I did.
Right. If you really want to write, it's because it comes from a place of passion. It's not about thinking. People always come up and say to me, I'd love to write. And I go, what have you written? Nothing. Annoys me.
Next on the book club.
Monday, February 2nd, 7:45 a.m. It is you. Of course it is you. Always it is you. Someone is catching up to me and I turn and see you. I'd known it would be you.
Some uncomfortable issues coming up.
I know you must have been watching me since I left my house. I can't stop myself from asking you what you're doing here, though I know your answer. Hello, I'm Claire Kendall and I am the author of The Book of You.
And that's all part of the Richard and Judy Book Club exclusive to WHSmith.
Settle down with a great book this spring. Check out the Richard and Judy Book Club reads in-store and online now. whsmith.co.uk/Richard and Judy. And don't forget you can download each and every book via Kobo for your e-reader or your smartphone via the Kobo app.